Hi, everyone. Welcome to another amazing topic of conversation. I want to thank my sponsors, the Health Channel and the Ready Check Go program of by Thermo Fisher. And today, I want to welcome TM. And I know this is going to be a tough conversation, but we're going to touch on a lot of things from bullying to hate crimes to everything because we need to understand what's going on and also what were you thinking. And before we get into the story, please welcome, thank you so much, TM, for
Thank
for
you.
doing this, for telling your story.
Thank you for having me today on your show. And I'm looking forward to hear questions and sharing my story with you and your audience.
So you were telling me that when you grew up, you came from a very dysfunctional family. Your parents got divorced, they were alcoholic. Like many of the kids, like I think it's like a very high percentage that goes through that. But you really thought that your mother didn't care. And on the contrary, she was dealing with a sickness called alcoholism and you had to literally grow up by yourself.
That's correct.
And then when in school, you were being bullied. So that's how it all started. So tell us how you got the name the Nazi Kid.
Well, growing up in a dysfunctional family, having a bad childhood, being bullied, a journalist once asked me, look, not every child with a bad childhood is becoming a Nazi. So what did really happen?
Yeah.
And so I left hate groups in 2002, and ever since I was trying to find it out for myself, and it took a while until I actually realized what happened. I had to reflect and analyze that myself, because I was just as smart as you and didn't know at all how this could happen. Now we have to go back to the childhood, and it's often childhood trauma that has to do with it. That's an explanation, but not an excuse. And this is important to understand too. I don't want pity for this. This is not an excuse. It's explaining it. So again, dysfunctional family. There was many things. My family was not really popular in the little town where we lived. My parents divorced and my father died. There was no male father figure present. It was really tricky. I tried to find who I am. I had a strong sense of belonging. I just wanted to be somebody. I wanted some attention and tried to find that. And a couple of the older kids in school, they started cracking anti-Semitic jokes. Anti-Semitic and Islamophobic, homophobic, racist, but also jokes about Hitler. And we're talking about the 1980s. At the time, Germany was fully aware that Hitler brought nothing than doom and destruction over Germany and the Jews and whole Europe and the whole world, that it must never happen again. Germans were already very well aware of that.
And
And
also
we learned
you told
very early.
me, sorry, but also you told me, and I want people to understand that at that point, you were taught in school about the Holocaust.
Right, exactly the same time. First, we heard about the jokes. I didn't know much about Jews. So we knew, okay, they were killed in the Holocaust. And then we learned about the Holocaust and World War II in school, about 13 years old boys when they're in puberty, discovering the masculinity and maybe want to be the bad boy. So I picked up those jokes as well. And really, I was good at telling those jokes, by the way, really good. I even invented new jokes. I took it way too far over the top. And I realized that I'm getting a lot of attention with those jokes. And the other kids went back to normal at some point, and I don't know if they had a normal to go back to, or if I didn't go back to normal because my normal would have been the bullied kid in the corner that I didn't want to be anymore. So I kept running with these jokes, and that led to the fact that they called me the Nazi kid, because that's all what I did, telling these jokes. And I didn't understand. I thought, we just learned in school, 1946, the Nuremberg trials, the Nazis were hung, they're gone. And yes, I knew Hitler was bad. I knew the Nazis were the bad guys. Otherwise, these jokes wouldn't have made sense. And we're making fun of Hitler in our jokes. How can I be a Nazi? I didn't know anything about skinheads or neo-Nazis. So I didn't understand. I felt so misunderstood and didn't know that Nazi kid label. I didn't understand it. And it felt like put me in a box, close the box, put it on a shelf, and put the label on it. Nazi kid, okay? And I lived in that box and started adapting certain things that I saw. And the first thing I adapted is that picture of the proud German. And for our listeners from the US, it's not necessarily a bad thing if you say you're proud to be an American. Patriotism is a big thing in the US. In Germany, it is different. Germans know very well how quick it goes from patriotism to National Socialism, ending up in a genocide. Because they've been there. They know how dangerous this is and how quick it can go. And therefore, saying I'm proud to be a German puts you already in the corner with the Nazis there. Especially at the time. That was the 80s. It was just 40 years after World War II ended and the Holocaust was over. So I picked this up. I'm a proud German. That was part of my new identity. And cracking these jokes and provoking. It was mostly about provoking. And then, again, I always say, I did something very anti-Semitic. I did something very racist. But not with the intention of hating Jews, because I didn't know any. I didn't know any black people, you know? I didn't know the target of our jokes. We talk about dehumanizing in a little bit too. But this is actually what it was, because there was no face to it.
You were like,
And
you just wanted to be not bullied and be someone. And that's how you really dehumanize it.
Right, exactly. And I didn't like the label, but I ran with it. It was the lesser of two evils. Better than the bullied kid. And then I remember a kid at the schoolyard gave me a cassette tape with hate music. And it's important to understand that all kinds of extremists, not only neo-Nazis, but also violent jihadists or gangs or whatever it is, will feed you with a softcore version of their hate that resonates with you. In this softcore version, they will tell you a truth. Sometimes even an objective truth, or at least a personal truth that resonates with you. And in my case, on this first tape, they were singing, "We are proud Germans, and they call us Nazis, but we're actually not. And we're so misunderstood. We're blamed for everything." And this was undeniably my truth. This is what was happening to me. And I felt like those guys are singing about me. They don't know me, but they do know me. How can that be? It was fascinating. And music was always very important. So I picked it up and I loved it. I ran with it. The problem was, okay, say we're here. And the next tape was here. Built up on this first tape and was a little bit more radical. Now, these musicians were already my trusted source. So I was like, they didn't lie to me on the first tape. They said the truth, undeniably. Nobody can say they didn't. They told the truth about me. So what they sing on the next tape must be true as well, right? Yeah, and then we're going here. And we're going here. And we're going here. And it built up on each other. And I was like, oh, on the last tape they sang something that is true. Because I already believed in that. And the next tape was more, but it was neo-Nazi skinheads. And skinheads are for the most part about provoking. The ideology is more secondary at that point.
So give us an example on what was on one of the tapes, like on the top part.
Oh, on the top part, it was really about stuff like, send the Jews into the gas, we need Hitler back, send black people back to Africa, saying the N-word, and so on. It was with Sieg Heil and Heil Hitler, and it was the most radical was on the top.
And you were like brainwashed slowly into believing that that was right.
Correct, but first it was still more about provoking at that time, because you have to understand skinheads, they don't like authority, it's more about provoking and stirring things up. It changed a little bit 2 years later when I went to college at the time. So the skinheads in Germany were a little bit different at the time from skinheads in the US. It was not like drug dealers and criminals. A lot of those kids were still having jobs, went to school, or went to college. So did I. And I went to college and I was introduced to a neo-Nazi party, the NPD. Like the Nazis are banned in Germany. Denying the Holocaust is a crime. You will go to prison in Germany. They are doing a very good job taking care of this. So this neo-Nazi party is hiding all that, and they're calling themselves National Democratic. But under the surface, they admit that they're Nazis. But I didn't want to go there. I was like, I'm a skinhead. I don't like authority. They just want to use us. They know they're cool. Let's go there. So I went there, and that's when the ideology kicked in. And let me tell you one little thing. What is also a problem, what was a problem in Germany as well, when you're 13 years old and you learn about the Holocaust in school, and imagine your grandparents are still alive and your friends' grandparents are still alive that were alive during World War II, German grandparents. And then you learn that most Germans have either participated or looked away during the genocide. And then you have to ask yourself the question, being 13 years old, your grandparents that you love, and you have never heard this story because your grandparents don't talk about this, right? You love your grandparents, and all of a sudden you hear this, and you ask yourself the question, have my grandparents been involved in an atrocity? Have they been involved in the Holocaust? Did they shoot somebody? Or were they just soldiers and followed orders? What did they do? And you couldn't find out, because, again, these are people you love, they're your family, and this is really hard. This is nothing a 13-year-old want to ask themselves. And you have a big problem, and sometimes you just sweep it under the carpet and just ignore it away, okay? Now, the neo-Nazi party had a solution for this, because they said the Holocaust never happened. I was like, oh, wait a minute. If the Holocaust never happened, then my grandparents couldn't have been criminals. They couldn't have been involved in it, right? And they said, well, Germany was defending itself from all these agitators and everything. Your grandparents were the good guys defending their country. And it makes you feel much better as a 15-year-old if you can say, oh, my grandparents were the good guys. So that's how it started. And they also taught us that the immigrants are coming, they're infesting the country, they're flooding the country, Germany first. We have to kick them out, and the government wants to swap out the German population and just want to have this mixed population here that they can control better. So it became a nationalist. And I picked up a guitar, I wrote all these lyrics, and I made some of these jokes into lyrics, and all of a sudden I could play this music, I could play the guitar, and I had people cheering to me when I sang those lyrics. I became a very well-known neo-Nazi musician in Germany in the 1990s, and put out about 8 records, unfortunately, and I cannot even pull them from the market because you sign your rights away, and neo-Nazis don't care about copyrights anyway. So that stuff is unfortunately still out, and I can't do anything about it. Then 1998, something else changed. The internet just exploded. And that meant 2 things. The one thing, I could get in touch with people all across the world, and they told us the same thing. Oh, in our country, the immigrants are coming, and the black guys, and this and that, and the communists, and the government is trying to swap out the population. And I'm like, oh wow, they have the same problem. It's not Germany under attack, the white race is under attack. So it's a global problem. And I became a white supremacist with that new secret knowledge.
That's when you got involved with the KKK?
That was about the same time, exactly. That was 1998, about the same time. I was pretty much on the height of that career and in that hate. And the second thing that happened with the internet, you have to realize Germany is taking care of this problem very good with neo-Nazis and the literature, and it's banned. We always had to smuggle that forbidden literature into Germany, and often got caught, and we couldn't get it. Anyway, but with the internet, one mouse click, and you have whatever you want. And somebody told me, go read this book. That explains everything. The black people are not the problem. They're just pawns. And all the others, and they're all pawns in a bigger game. There's a bigger enemy that we have to fight. Go read this book. And I thought, they probably want me to read Mein Kampf or whatever. I was never interested in that. I never read it to this day. No, it was the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And for your audience to understand, it is what we call fake news today. produced in Russia in 1903, made up to stir hate against Jews by anti-Zionists and anti-Semites. It is not true in this book, but it was presented as the truth, the blueprint how the Jews want to take over the world, this overpowerful enemy. And the white race was the only thing that stood in between that overpowerful enemy and their goal, world domination. This is why the Jews attack the whites so much, because we're the only thing standing in between them. This is why they made up the Holocaust, just to blame white people for it, and so on. This is all what we believed in, and it was like, I thought I found the Holy Grail. I was like, the secret knowledge nobody has, because, like in every conspiracy theory, that is what they're hiding from us. And now we know the truth. This is why everything is happening. This is why Hitler hated the Jews. Now everything made sense. How do we get rid of this problem? Well, get rid of the whole people. Oh, that's what Hitler was trying to do. He was not successful. And they made me feel like somebody who can save my people. And, I speak a lot at synagogues. I speak a lot to Jewish kids and black kids as well. And I always ask, who here doesn't want to defend their people? Everybody wants to be there for their people. And this is okay. And now you can be there for your people, and you're the good ones, and there's this evil, overpowerful enemy that wants to destroy everybody. And you can be the superhero, taking care of this, be part of this, making sure.
Have you had more contact with Jewish people? Because I know that when you were growing up, you've never met anybody.
Still
Jewish.
not.
So still not.
Still not. I was still in Germany. I was in touch with American groups. I traveled frequently to the US to Klan meetings or to play concerts. But I never was in touch with a Jewish person, not knowingly. So I didn't know, and I didn't want to. I also never been to a concentration camp. Now let me explain you why. Like in school, we were not there because the funds were not there. That has changed. German schools nowadays go to concentration camps, and I think this is really important. Unfortunately, at my time, that wasn't possible. Then, when I was in that movement, I didn't want to go because I felt that was a lie. I was like, don't show me that. I don't want to see that. And later, after I got out and I accepted the Holocaust happened, I felt like you don't have to prove it to me anymore. So I swept it away again. Maybe because I didn't want to feel guilty, I don't know. But we can talk about that in a minute. So what happened here, I was at the top of my career in this movement, and I became a full-blown anti-Semite and Holocaust denier. And there was 10 years from about 1989 to 1998 about this happened, this radicalization from the Holocaust joke-cracking child to becoming the full-blown anti-Semite. From unintentional to fully intentional. And it's a big difference because in 1998, I did it because, yes, I hated Jews at the time, and this was my whole intention. And with that whole explanation, again, it's an explanation, not an excuse. And the thing is, I always was climbing up the ladder with those skinheads in the neo-Nazi party and also in the KKK. So we started our own group, Europe-wide, with strongholds in Sweden and Germany. And we even recruited police officers in our ranks. And of course the German government didn't like that very much. They were afraid that we were becoming too big. So they tried to do everything to get rid of the group. And that also meant, how do we get rid of TM as the leader of the group? So they put a lot of pressure on us. And I remember they visited us one time and they made clear to me that I understand that if one of my members is committing a violent crime, that I would be responsible and I may go to prison. First I said, well, we're telling our members not to commit violent crimes. But then it dawned on me, well, we're not the hippies preaching peace and love. We have a hateful message. We have a violent message. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to tell our members not to commit violent crimes, right? And I realized I do not have my members under control. And I thought, well, if I go to prison, I already had 3 children. And I realized I will not be good to my not any good for my children if I'm in prison. I will not be good for my cause I'm fighting for if I'm in prison. I'll be worthless. And I also thought prison is a very scary place. Still do. And I was simply scared to go to prison. And I decided to leave the hate group. just of fear,
Just because
only of
fear
fear.
of prison, not because of the belief that you were spreading hate.
Well, we always made sure that we stayed within the law because neo-Nazis in Germany are masters in staying in the laws and using different words and hiding their real hate and only saying it with words how it's allowed. And sometimes they get busted for it, and they go to prison frequently for political reasons, because what they say, because it's hate speech and it's not allowed. And I was just afraid to go to prison too. I thought I was good enough that I wouldn't go to prison for what we're saying, because I was convinced we were hiding it good enough. I really was afraid that one of my members could go, take out, and commit a violent crime, that I don't have them under control. Because again, we were preaching a violent, hateful message.
At this
And I
point,
was like, okay, I have
you
to.
had three kids. You
Yes.
were teaching them that rhetoric about hate.
No, we actually did not. I thought I was smart, and I thought, if you push something on children, what will they do? They often reject it if pushed too hard, because kids like to rebel. They want to go against their parents very often, and I was aware of that. So I was like, well, if I do that too hard, they might do exactly the opposite. So I will let them see and learn, and they will find out themselves that we're the good guys and the other ones are the bad guys. They will just see themselves. I'm so glad and so fortunate that my kids were smarter than I. They never got into this belief system or these hate groups. So I'm really glad. Well, the thing was, so I got my head out of the hate. I left the hate group. But that doesn't make me an anti-racist or a friend of Jews or whatever all of a sudden. No, I was still an anti-Semite. I was still Islamophobe. I was still a racist. After a while, decided I have to move away from the region because I was still in touch with some of the members, and I thought the authorities may think I'm still behind it, even though I left my positions and left the group officially. And I decided to move to a different city. And the only apartment we could find at the time, seriously, was owned by a Turkish immigrant, by a Muslim. And I was like, really, are you kidding me? I don't want to move in there. But I had no other choice. That was the only thing available. I started lying to myself. I will find something else. It's just temporary. And he lived in the same house, in the apartment below us. So we shared the same hallway. And we had plenty of interactions because he paid me to repair his computer because he knew I needed money. And it just felt like a job. So, even though I was sitting in his living room repairing his computer, it's just a job. I'm not friends with this guy, okay? When we met in the hallway, well, he's just my landlord. He's not my friend, even though we had friendly interactions. And I didn't even realize within 6 months how this unlikely friendship was building up, because I was like, that was 1 year after 9/11. I hated Muslims, I was like, he's like Osama bin Laden. He will kill me in my bed at some point. I will unmask him, expose him as the Muslim terrorist he is. I thought, I was not successful pulling this mask off. I was trying so hard because I was like, man, he seems to be so nice, but I know he's pretending. And then he invited me for dinner. And I was like, dude, I don't want to sit with them in their kitchen, with their kids and whatever. Come on. But I heard too in that culture, it might be very rude if you reject a generous offer of food and an invitation to their home. And I knew that, and I was like, did something selfish. I accepted the invitation because I didn't want to find out how much he would be offended. Okay, so I did it. And I thought, man, what will he serve? Couscous, falafel? Is he trying to poison me? He touched it with his dirty fingers. All these weird thoughts. And the appetizer was fish soup. I didn't like it. But anyway, the entree was chicken and fries. And I was like, this is so normal. And then, why so normal? Why I'm defining what's normal for him? Is not he defining his normal?
You already had made a picture of this guy being bad.
Right. So I thought chicken and fries can't be normal to him. Couscous and falafel must be. No, chicken and fries was just as normal to him too. And I found it out. And I found also out that night when we're sitting there, or realizing that I saw it all the whole time already. He was worrying about his children's future the same as I did. Worry about my children's future. He was worrying about his job and his future the same as I worried. He liked good food, good music, a good movie. Well, just like me. And I learned all these commonalities. And I was like, that dude is like me. I can't hate that man. For what? Because he talks different or prays different? Or immigrated? That became so secondary. It didn't matter. And he actually unmasked me. I was the bad guy at the table, expecting all these bad stereotypical things to happen from him. And they didn't, because it wasn't him. He was just a normal human being. He was just nice. He showed me something that I thought I didn't deserve at the time. Compassion and unconditional love. You know, in that movement, in that hate movement, you are in warrior mode, like the Vikings. The Vikings who want to die with a sword in the hand, fighting. Not begging on your knees. And I was like, he's coming with his hippie love. I don't want this. I want him to hate me back. And he didn't. He loved me back. And this is what made my hate crumble, and I had to find out. So I discovered the Muslim community, man, they're just human beings. They like chicken and fries. Then I moved to Memphis 12 years later. Got to know the black community in Memphis. They have an African American population of about 70%.
They like chicken and fries.
Yeah, and guess what? Yeah, and the kids were the same about their future and so on. And I was like, the color of their skin becomes so secondary because they have the most of the things that have going on. It's just the same as what's going on in my life too. And I was like, I can't hate those people. I mean, I already knew at the time in 2012 that ideology was bad. I already left anti-Semitism behind. But I could reflect on the racism at this time, you know? And I found out, wow, and they also like chicken and fries. In 2018, and I hope we have some time to dive into that. I try to make it quick. I went to the Museum of Tolerance in LA. I had the opportunity to go to LA, and somebody suggested go there. It's run by the Simon Wiesenthal Center. I knew Simon Wiesenthal Center. I heard about him, Nazi hunter, famous, but I have never heard about their museum there. And again, I mentioned before, I never went to a concentration camp in my whole life. Because later I thought, you don't have to prove it to me anymore. I believe it. And I went there, and they have different exhibits. One, the Holocaust exhibit. And at the end, you go through the Warsaw Ghetto, and you will stand in front of two doors, and one says children and adults, and you have to choose a door. And no matter what door you choose, you end up in the same room, which is a concrete bunker that is technically like a replica of a gas chamber. And it's called the Hall of Testimonies. And the testimonies of different survivors are shown there on monitors, but it's a very dim light. It's a very weird environment you're in because they want you to feel what they felt in this concrete bunker. And at the end, you leave, and the exit sign also asks you who was responsible. And even though I was out of the movement for like 16 years already, I realized I never reflected on that anti-Semitism because I never met Jewish people to talk about it. Not really. I met a couple, but we never talked about being Jewish or not being Jewish. It was never a thing. And I asked the guys at the Simon Wiesenthal Center, I said, I need to work with you guys. We need to do something. And it was May 2018. School was out for summer. We decided to do something with college campuses. And said, let's talk after September. Okay, and then they hired a new campus director. They didn't know where the journey goes. And then Pittsburgh happened. Tree of Life Synagogue, 11 Jews were murdered. And this was the wake-up call. Okay, we need to send GM somewhere because a couple colleges had also some incidents. And I started speaking for the Simon Wiesenthal Center for the first time ever sharing my story. And for the first time ever getting to know Jews. In this case, Jewish kids. And important in context, I remember the second event, I was sitting down with the local chapter of AE Pi, the Jewish fraternity, that organized the event together with Hillel. And it was a dinner, and I caught myself looking around who's looking Jewish. I tried to see, and I was like, nobody looks Jewish. So I still had the picture in my head. I could choose either from the horrible picture how Jews look like that the Nazis told, or the picture I learned like in second grade of a black cat and a black coat at the temple wall and Payot, you know? So this is how a Jew looked to me. So, and none of these kids looked like that. One was red-haired, another one was black. Oh, the one has a Star of David. He must be Jewish. So, of course, they picked my brain, I picked theirs, and I learned the Jewish community is just as diverse as any other community. And guess what? They also like chicken and fries. And I also learned about denominations, about Reform, about Conservative, about Orthodox, Ultra-Orthodox, Modern Orthodox, Hasidic, Chabad, and all that stuff I learned on the way and had no idea about that. Most non-Jews just think Jewish is Jewish, period.
Correct, but there's a lot of denominations. So from there, you already started to get to know the Jewish people, but now currently you're in the process of converting into Judaism. Why?
Right. That is a good question, and I asked myself that question, of course, too, and I think everybody who's on this way needs to ask themselves this question. Why? Otherwise, it needs to make sense. So first,
the hate and keep on going like normally and not spread hate, but you went all the way now into converting into Judaism.
Right. I had to make sure for myself that I know that it's not just a substitute of finding a new identity, but I realized, well, when I checked out the Muslim community, I didn't convert to Islam either. When I with the black community, I didn't become a black Baptist either. You know what I mean? But with the Jewish community, it was different. I was felt that connection to the Jewish people, and also I started learning about Jewish ethics, and I was like, these ethical principles just line up with my newfound ethical principles as well. That was a match. We were on the same level. I was like, wow. Okay, and I'm also an interfaith activist. So since 2018 in Memphis, I'm involved in groups where we bring different faiths together and have different events. And during one of these events, somebody invited a rabbi that I've never seen. And I remember that was 2019. And I already had been to a Jewish family for Pesach Seder. I have been experienced Hanukkah and so on. But I've never been to a synagogue to pray. I've spoken at several synagogues, but never for a service. And I asked Allison in Chicago, Allison Pure-Slovin, who's the Midwest director for the Sound Movies and Thought Center, I said, Allison, do you think we can set something up for Yom Kippur? I think this is important for me to get to know what it's about. The holiest day for the Jewish people. You know? And she said, oh yeah, that's a great idea. But you know what, we can't set anything up here. I'm modern Orthodox. I don't even drive on Shabbos, so I don't know what we can do. Why don't you go to a synagogue in Memphis and ask if you can come for, let's say, Erev Yom Kippur, Kol Nidre is beautiful. Do that. And I said, Allison, I'm not in touch with the Jewish community in Memphis, at least not at the time. I said, what do you want me to do? Knock at the synagogue and tell them, hey, I'm the former neo-Nazi, can I come for Yom Kippur? You're laughing. Okay, see?
No,
of course not.
In a sense, you have to have real courage to do that.
Yeah, and also I had this fear of rejection.
Correct.
You know?
That's why the courage.
I always had this fear of rejection. A lot of people who are about to leave this movement have a fear of rejection, and that plays a pivotal part whether they leave or not. The fear of rejection. Anyway, so I was here, and at one of these interfaith events, somebody brought a rabbi from Memphis. I was like, this is my chance. I was the MC of the event. We didn't talk about my past. It was just about interfaith. So I approached him afterwards and was like, I'm discovering Judaism. I'm a speaker for the Sound Movies and Thought Center. And I would like to experience Yom Kippur. Maybe Kol Nidre was suggested. And he gave me a card and let's talk. And I went home and I was like, oops, I didn't tell him a very important part about me, okay? So I texted him and told him, maybe you want to look me up on my website or Wikipedia. Because he needs to, and I said, if you're okay with this, then we're cool. And I didn't hear back. It was a Tuesday. I didn't hear back. Then it was a Wednesday, the next day, and I was like, okay, I knew it. The people I vilified the most 20 years ago, when they find out, they will turn their backs on me. I knew it, especially a rabbi. Here we go. That's maybe next year for Yom Kippur. Okay, I'll rewrote it off. Then Thursday night, I get the message back, said, okay, you can come. I'm looking forward to learning you. That was his words.
Learning you?
He's looking forward to learning me. And I found out a day later, the Sound Movies and Thought Center called me and said, hey, a rabbi from Memphis was checking you out. We told him you're kosher. So I got the kosher stamp from the Sound Movies and Thought Center. And okay, so I went to Erev Yom Kippur. And I dressed up, and I knew it's the day when Jews all around the world ask God for forgiveness for their sins. I knew that. And I dressed up, and I got a kippah, wore the kippah, and got a sheet with a transliteration, so I could pronounce the Hebrew and I could participate. And I was so proud and excited to be there, and also surprised that nobody judged me, even though everybody knew about me there. It was announced. I was like, wow. After the service, somebody walked up and said, TM, tell us about anti-Semitism in Germany. How is that? And I said, look, I was really proud that I could tell them Germans have done a great job atoning, making up for it, that it must never happen again, reflecting on it. I don't think you have to be afraid of Germans anymore when it comes to anti-Semitism. And I went home, and the next day on the news, I saw that a German neo-Nazi had attacked the synagogue in Halle, Germany. And I felt like a liar. What have I told these people the night before? Those people the night before. I was like, wow. And then something else dawned on me. It crawled up like a really bad feeling. It crawled up on me. And I realized, wait a minute. We talked about like security measurements there, but I didn't think about it the night before. But now, looking back, I sat in there. I wore a kippah. I prayed in Hebrew. At least I tried. If somebody would have violently entered the synagogue, killing everybody inside because the Jewish. Well, I made myself part of the Jewish community that night. You couldn't differ. I would have been dead. All of a sudden, something changed from me. Until that point, I always felt sorry when something happened to my Muslim friends, black friends, Jewish friends. I always picked up the phone, asked everybody, are you guys okay? Can I do something for you? But I never could walk in their shoes. And now for the very first time, I felt how it is when you are afraid, when you feel fear, and when you feel unsafe because you're part of one of these groups. That was a game changer for me. So again, it was just before COVID, so I started going to Erev Shabbat services and enjoying the dinners. But didn't go to the services yet. I had to work for the most of the time Saturdays. Then COVID happened, so Saturdays Shabbat services were not streamed, but Erev Shabbat were before Shabbat. So I participated in that sometimes, and I asked myself too, okay, this since I never, and how can I explain it? I was always believed in God, even though I was never practicing a certain religion. In the movement, it was all about paganism, all about these Vikings, warrior mode, rather than the weak Christians begging on their knees for forgiveness. So there was and by the way, Jesus was Jewish. So as an anti-Semite, well, then you can't be Christian anyway. Shouldn't. History taught us different, but this is a completely different topic. But this was the stance of the German neo-Nazi movement. That they say Christianity is Judaism for non-Jews. Therefore, you can't be anti-Semitic and neo-Nazi and Christian at the same time. Doesn't work. Technically, they're right. So I wasn't either. In the clan, that changed a little bit, but then I rejected all kinds of organized religion. I was like, okay, and I never believed really in the Trinity. I never really believed that Jesus was Son of God and resurrection and all that. But I grew up with a basic thing for the Christians, what they call the Old Testament and everything. And so that resonated with me. So I was like, okay, that part I believed in, that I found actually in Judaism, okay? And I asked myself before, what attracts me? Is it the community? Is it the ethics? Or is it the religion? And I realized it was the whole package that makes Judaism. And I found that is very unique. and you only find it in Judaism. And one of these interfaith events, somebody asked me too, well, GM, you are here, you're one of the directors, but what belief system do you belong to? What do you believe in? And at the time I was like, I think I'm a compassionate deist with a tendency to Judaism. And it dawned on me what I said there. So then during the pandemic, getting to know more and more about it, I just made the decision, okay, this is what I want. This is, I just felt comfortable enough with my rabbi to talk about it, to answer the questions that I had. And he's a really great man.
What
And,
about your
and
family?
well, fortunately, I have a great wife who supports me in everything I do, including my decision to convert. And she's probably, when it comes to religious beliefs, closer to where I stand anyway. So there's not a problem that I have a big that we have an interfaith marriage in this case, because she doesn't go to church. I never went to church neither, so that's not a thing. So that is not a big problem. Otherwise, the whole family accepts it, supports it. It's my decision. So far, I had only one attempt in the family that somebody contacted me with the attempt to save me, I guess, that I'm not going to hell. But I didn't go in that conversation.
On the
So,
contrary, I
but
think that not only you are not safe, you are saving a lot of the people from spreading hate.
thank you. I'm trying one person at a time. Well, again, during the pandemic and now, I just made the decision. Yes, I want to convert. Now I'm in the middle of that and looking at maybe August to be done with it. And
Yeah, it has been it has really been an eye-opening, a pleasure to meet you. I wish you all the best on your way, not only to conversion, but to speaking to everybody so that they can understand why all these conspiracy theories go way beyond, why the QAnons, the neo Nazis are getting so much traction. So, thank you for giving us a little bit of your story, and definitely to be continued. So, everybody,
thank you.
thank you so much, and see you next week. And above all, stay well.